Good afternoon, grade 8s. I'm Mrs. Melanie Lone. I'm going to discuss with you the chemical effect of an electric current with the emphasis on electrolysis today. So the question I want to ask is, what will happen if an electric current flows through a copper chloride solution? Now let us see. I have a short video for you. Pay attention because we are going to discuss everything that happens in the video. We are going to discuss in the slides, in the rest of the slides.
The electrolysis of copper chloride. Copper chloride is a salt. It's bluey turquoisey in color. We put it in a beaker and dissolve it in water. The solution, as we call it, the salt is the solute, the copper chloride, and the water is the solvent. And together they make a solution. We then fit 2 carbon electrodes to a battery and insert it in the liquid. The electrodes are attached to the battery, and we have the positive electrode on the left and the negative electrode on the right. And at the positive electrode, we see some bubbles of chlorine gas. Chlorine gas smells like Jik, or HDH that you put in a swimming pool. Notice how the electrodes actually appear to be broken at the surface. We'll talk more about that when we study light next. So we still have the chlorine bubbles on the left and the copper at the negative electrode. You can see that characteristic browny color. It's clearer when I remove the electrodes. And so on the right we have a deposit of copper on the negative electrode. Back in the solution, that's kind of like the drawing we wanted you to draw. The electrolysis.
So the question was, what is the effect of an electric current on a copper chloride solution? And I hope you realized that it causes a chemical reaction. That is what happened. So let us recap. When an electric current passes through a copper chloride solution, the copper chloride decomposes, or it breaks down into copper and chlorine. You could clearly see the reddish-brown copper layer around the one electrode and the chlorine gas bubbles at the other electrode. So to summarize this in a word equation, we can write copper chloride to form copper plus chlorine, and that arrow indicates that there's a chemical change, a chemical reaction that takes place. So an electric current can break down a compound into simpler substances or elements when an electric current flows through it. So we know this now, that an electric current can cause a chemical reaction and it can break down a compound into simpler substances. And this process is called electrolysis. So let us look at the word electrolysis. It can be broken down into 2 words, 2 parts. Electro, which refers to electric current, and lysis, which means to break up or to separate. So electrolysis means then, by using an electric current, you can break down a compound. So in the video, you also saw that copper chloride is a blue crystalline substance, and it cannot conduct electric current in this solid state. So that is why we need to dissolve it in water. So the copper chloride solution can conduct an electric current, and that solution that conducts the electric current is called the electrolyte. So you can hear the words electrolysis, electrolyte, electrode. So make sure you understand the difference between each one of these terms. So if we look at the setup of apparatus that we saw in the video, let's look at all the different components. There was a battery or cells, and the battery was connected to a carbon rod. The positively charged carbon rod is the anode. The negatively charged carbon rod is called the cathode because the negative rod is connected to the negative terminal of the cell or the battery, and the anode is connected to the positive terminal of the cell or battery, and therefore it's positively charged. So these two carbon electrodes each has a name. It's anode and cathode. So the chlorine bubbles were observed, you can smell it and you can see them, at the anode. The positively charged electrode is where we observe the chlorine gas bubbles, and at the negatively charged cathode is where we saw the copper layer, the copper metal that formed around that electrode, the reddish brown layer. And then in the beaker, the blue solution is the copper chloride that was dissolved in water, called the electrolyte. So the process is called electrolysis. The solution that conducts the current is called the electrolyte. The whole setup is called the electrolytic cell. So make sure you know each one of these terms. It's very important to not get confused between them. So let's look at the function of each component in the electrolytic cell. Firstly, the cells or the battery is to provide the energy for the current to flow, because if there's no current, there will not be any chemical reaction taking place. What is the function of the carbon electrodes? They conduct the electric current into the electrolyte. So they connect the cell with the solution. They bring the current from the cells into the solution. Now, electrodes can be made of carbon or graphite. Carbon and graphite is basically the same thing. The graphite inside a pencil is pure carbon and can be used as an electrode. So if you sharpen a pencil on both sides, that grey graphite rod inside the pencil, that is pure carbon, and you can also use that as a carbon rod. So let's see, where did we make the observation? The electrode where the copper forms is called the cathode, and that was the negatively charged electrode. And then the electrode where the chlorine forms, that is the anode with a positive charge. So it's a lot to remember. So let's see if we can make it easier for you to remember. So I came up with this sentence: the negative copper cat smells chlorine at the positive anode, or you can say the nice copper cat smells chlorine at the positive anode. So negative and nice, you hear the ends. The nice refers to negative. So the nice copper cat means that copper was formed at the cathode, which was negative. And what did the cat smell? The cat smelled chlorine at the positive anode. So you can try and remember that sentence. It will make it easier for you to remember all these facts. And then we also had an electrolyte in the electrolytic cell, and that was the solution that conducts the electric current. In this case, it was the copper chloride solution. But if you take water and you use water as an electrolyte, you can even, the water can even undergo electrolysis. Now you know that a water molecule consists of one oxygen and two hydrogen atoms. So if you pass an electric current through water by using a battery and two carbon electrodes, and you leave the current to flow for a few seconds, you will start seeing bubbles forming at each of the two electrodes. And that means that the water is split up into hydrogen and oxygen. So water can be split up into hydrogen and oxygen if you pass an electric current through the water through the process of electrolysis. So water, which is also a compound, is then broken down into the elements hydrogen and oxygen gas. So the next thing that you must know about the electrolytic cell is the energy conversion that takes place in an electrolytic cell. So we know now a current can cause a chemical reaction. Now a current is where we get the electrical energy from. The battery provides us with electrical energy, and that electrical energy is conducted into the electrolyte, into the solution. And then in the solution, what takes place? A chemical reaction. And when a chemical reaction takes place, chemical energy is released. So what is the energy conversion? The electrical energy is converted into chemical energy. And you can see the word converted into means changed. The electrolytic cell basically changes electrical energy into chemical energy. But the word to use here is converted, the energy conversion in an electrolytic cell. So why is it important for us to know about electrolysis? Electrolysis are used in everyday life for basically two reasons. The first one is what we call electroplating. Now you remember the carbon rod was covered with a layer of copper. Now instead of the carbon rod, you can put anything else there, like an iron key or any ornament or anything that you want to cover with a copper. And that is to cover something with a thin layer of metal to make it look better, so make it look nice or more appealing, or to prevent it from rusting. That is what electroplating is. You cover something, any object, with a thin layer of metal to either make it look better or to prevent it from rusting. So there are a few examples. To cover an iron key with copper, that is the example I used here in the diagram. And then you can also cover kitchen utensils and car parts with chromium. You know, all these nice shiny things that you get in your kitchen, a tap, your kitchen stove, a car grill, wheel rims of a car, the bicycle handle or the bicycle bell. All those things are made of iron, but they are being covered with a layer of chromium to make them look nice. And then if they are covered with chromium, they don't rust, and that is done through electroplating. And then similarly, we can also cover cutlery with silver, jewelry with gold, and then another very important use is to cover iron plates with zinc to prevent them from rusting. And those are the roof plates, our roof plates that we use. So it's just iron, but they cover them with a layer of zinc to keep them or to prevent them from rusting. So electroplating is very important in everyday life. A second use of electrolysis is to prepare chemicals. Like chlorine, you saw in that electrolytic cell that chlorine was one of the products. And the chlorine is very important for us because they use it to disinfect our drink water. But you can also prepare other chemicals like oxygen and hydrogen and some other chemicals as well through electrolysis. So electrolysis basically have two very important uses for us: electroplating and to prepare certain chemicals we need for everyday life. So learners, then the next thing you need to do is to answer the quiz. There's 11 questions today, and I hope you're going to enjoy the quiz, and I hope you're going to get all the answers right. So please go to the quiz. There's the link and there's the QR code. So please complete the quiz. You can watch the video again and you can do the quiz more than once so that you can practice all of these questions and make sure you understand all the terminology. Thank you very much for watching.